Well, here's a warning about a phone scam that is tricking people out of some big money. The Bexar County Sheriff's Office says a woman in northeast Bexar County just lost tens of thousands of dollars to this scam. So here's what happened.
When her phone rang and the caller sounded like the kind of person society trains us to obey. An attorney, calm and procedural, speaking in the language of programs, custody, and bond. According to the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, the caller convinced her that her son had been arrested after a car crash tied to driving while intoxicated, and that a staggering bond had been set. The urgency wasn't just emotional, it was operational. The caller had a method, a payment rail, and a deadline. Within that pressure cooker, the victim did what the scammer instructed. She deposited money into a Bitcoin ATM kiosk. By the time the call slowed down, she had sent a total of $36,000 through a cryptocurrency machine, believing she was buying her son's freedom. Instead, she was converting her cash into a near-instant, difficult-to-reverse digital transfer, one of the most efficient exits modern fraud has. The sheriff's office would later warn residents that real attorneys and law enforcement will not demand payments through Bitcoin kiosks, gift cards, or similar channels, precisely because those channels are built for speed and finality. In scams like this, the technology is rarely exotic. It's everyday infrastructure: phones, caller identification, payment kiosks, and a social engineering script tuned to exploit how families behave under fear. The victim's digital habits and literacy level weren't described publicly, but the mechanics of the fraud suggest a familiar profile. Someone capable of following step-by-step instructions, and someone who trusts that if a process sounds official enough, it probably is. According to the sheriff's office, the caller introduced himself as an attorney associated with something described as a pre-trial incarceration program. That phrase is doing important work in the scam. It signals bureaucracy. It implies records, procedures, and authority. It also implicitly discourages the victim from breaking the workflow by calling around, asking questions, or slowing down because the scammer frames hesitation as risk to a loved one. The story the caller provided was tailored to trigger maximum panic: a crash, an arrest, and a second driver described as pregnant, and a retired federal employee. Details that heighten the implied legal stakes and moral urgency. The bond amount, $180,000, was positioned to make any immediate payment of $18,000 sound like a painful but plausible down payment on a bigger problem. According to BCSO, the scam began with that single inbound call. That first contact is the entry point, and it leverages a foundational weakness in consumer communications. The phone network was never designed to authenticate identity in the way modern users assume it does. Scammers can use tactics consistent with caller ID spoofing, technology that manipulates what appears on a recipient's screen, so the call feels local, familiar, or institutionally credible. Even without a spoofed number, the scam can still work because the victim is reacting to the voice and the storyline, not to cryptographic proof. The credibility-building phase is largely psychological, but it is scaffolded by technology. The scammer is remote, anonymous, and able to run the same script across many targets at scale, adjusting only the personal details that make it land. Then comes the digital hook, a demand for payment that is framed as both urgent and normal within the fabricated legal process. According to the sheriff's office, the caller instructed the victim to deposit $18,000 into a Bitcoin ATM kiosk located in the 5,500 block of Walsham. Bitcoin ATMs are not traditional bank ATMs. They're kiosks that convert cash into cryptocurrency by sending funds to a wallet address, essentially a destination on the blockchain, a public ledger that records transfers. The user doesn't store the cash in the machine, The cash is exchanged for crypto and transmitted. From a fraud perspective, this is a near-perfect mechanism. It takes physical money, traceable by human memory and bank withdrawal records, and turns it into a digital asset that can be moved quickly, split into multiple transfers, or sent through services that complicate tracking. The scammer doesn't need to meet the victim, doesn't need a check, and doesn't need a bank account under their real name. They only need the victim to complete the transaction. According to BCSO, the victim complied, depositing the first $18,000. If you're imagining a single button press, the reality is often more methodical. A typical Bitcoin ATM transaction requires the user to input or scan information that routes the cryptocurrency to a specific wallet address, often provided by the scammer via text message, spoken out loud over the phone, or displayed as a QR code. The user interface is designed for legitimate customers buying crypto, but in a scam it becomes a guided remote control device. The scammer stays on the line, walking the victim through each screen and applying pressure whenever the victim hesitates. The kiosk becomes a physical proxy for a digital transfer the victim may not fully understand. And the scammer's real innovation is not hacking code, but hacking decision-making in real time. After that first payment, the attacker escalated. According to BCSO, the caller contacted the victim again and claimed the pregnant driver had miscarried, an emotional jolt meant to collapse rational verification and expand the perceived consequences. The scammer demanded another $18,000, and the victim again deposited funds into the Bitcoin machine. This second transaction matters because it demonstrates how fraudsters use iterative payments to normalize the process. Once a victim has already crossed the line, once they have already paid, each subsequent payment can feel like completing the same case requirements, not like reevaluating the entire scenario. The scam runs on momentum. In digital terms, it's a funnel. Initial contact, trust establishment, first conversion, then repeat conversions. The scammer then pushed for an even larger step. According to BCSO, the caller demanded an additional $20,000 to have the case dismissed. At that point, the fraud wasn't just a single emergency payment. It was turning into an ongoing account relationship where the scammer claims to manage a legal outcome in exchange for serial transfers. That is the exact kind of pattern cybersecurity analysts often flag. A problem is introduced, a supposedly authoritative helper appears, and the victim is moved onto a payment channel that is fast, irreversible, and outside normal consumer protections. Unlike credit card charges, cryptocurrency transfers generally cannot be reversed by calling a bank and disputing the transaction. And unlike a wire to a known institution, a crypto transfer to a wallet address is not inherently tied to a legal identity. This is also where a key security control kicked in, one that has nothing to do with encryption and everything to do with human pattern recognition at a bank counter. According to BCSO, when the victim tried to withdraw funds, a bank teller recognized the situation as a scam and urged her to verify the caller's information with her son. That intervention disrupted the scammer's timeline, which is critical because the attacker's advantage is urgency. The moment a victim slows down enough to verify the attacker's story begins to collapse. The victim then learned her son had not been in a crash and was safe at home, according to the sheriff's office. And with that realization comes the brutal technical truth. The funds were not sitting in a holding account. They had already been converted and sent along a digital path the victim did not control. Cybersecurity experts note that the red flags in cases like this are often visible in the plumbing of the interaction, even when the story feels convincing. One major warning sign is the payment demand itself. Law enforcement and legitimate attorneys do not resolve bonds, dismissals, or urgent legal emergencies through Bitcoin kiosks. gift cards, or other cash-to-crypto mechanisms, as BCSO emphasized. Another red flag is enforced secrecy and speed. The insistence on staying on the phone, not contacting family, and treating verification as a threat. Technically, there's also a pattern in how scammers choose channels: a phone call for emotional control and cryptocurrency for payment finality. If the victim is directed to a kiosk, that suggests the attacker is deliberately steering away from regulated reversible systems. And while blockchain is transparent, transparency doesn't equal easy recovery. Wallet addresses are visible, but connecting them to a real-world person, and doing so fast enough to freeze funds at an exchange, is a race scammers try to win by moving assets quickly. As for the status of the investigation, the public information in this case focuses on warning and response, rather than technical attribution. Deputies responded to the victim's home in the northeastern area of the county, according to BCSO, and the agency publicly urged residents to hang up immediately, verify claims directly with loved ones, and report incidents to dispatch. The sheriff's office did not publicly release details, such as the scammer's phone number, specific wallet addresses, transaction identifiers, or whether blockchain tracing has connected the funds to a particular exchange or service. In many crypto-related fraud cases, investigators may attempt to follow the on-chain trail and identify off-ramps, points where cryptocurrency is converted back to cash, because that is where subpoenas and platform cooperation can sometimes surface a lead. But without confirmed statements, it would be speculation to claim where the funds went or whether recovery is possible. What is clear is the operational intent. The scammer used a widely available crypto kiosk as a bridge between the victim's cash and the scammer's digital control. This incident fits into a broader digital threat landscape where social engineering is often more effective than malware. Attackers don't always need to breach a device when they can persuade a person to authorize the transfer themselves. Cryptocurrency has become a recurring tool in that ecosystem because it provides global reach, speed, and a degree of pseudonymity. The same attributes that make crypto useful for legitimate transactions can also make it attractive for criminals who want to minimize friction and maximize distance from the victim. And Bitcoin ATMs in particular add a physical layer to the scam that can feel official. A machine in a public place, a screen with instructions, a receipt, while still delivering a digital transaction that is hard to unwind. Cybersecurity experts recommend a few practical controls that map directly to how this scam worked. Verification must happen out of band. If an unexpected caller claims a loved one is in danger, confirmation should come from directly contacting that loved one or another trusted family member through a known number, not through any callback number provided by the caller. Payment channel scrutiny matters. Any demand for cryptocurrency, gift cards, or kiosk deposits in a legal emergency is a high-risk indicator. And institutions can help too. Bank staff and retail employees who are trained to spot coercion patterns can create the pause that breaks the attacker's momentum, as happened here. The victim's family will likely remember this as a financial nightmare, but the deeper lesson is technological. Modern fraud doesn't always look like hacking. Sometimes it looks like a phone call, a believable